Marcus Chen pressed his back against the cold metal wall of the alien detention facility. His breath came in short gasps as plasma bolts sizzled past his head, leaving glowing scorch marks on the corridor walls. The security alarms wailing echoed through the massive ship, and he could hear the heavy footsteps of Zephyrian guards closing in from both directions. Stupid, 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 he muttered to himself, checking the charge on his stolen plasma rifle. 3 shots left, not nearly enough to fight his way out of this mess, but he couldn't leave her behind. Marcus had been working as a maintenance engineer on the trading station at the edge of human space when everything went wrong. The Zephyrian Empire had launched a surprise attack, claiming the station violated some ancient territorial agreement nobody had heard of. Most humans had been killed in the initial assault, but some were taken prisoner for reasons nobody understood. He should have run when he had the chance, should have taken the last evacuation shuttle and fled back to Earth like everyone else. Instead, he'd hidden in the maintenance tunnels, watching helplessly as the lizard-like Zephyrians rounded up the survivors. That's when he saw her. She was different from the other prisoners. While the captured humans cowered in terror, she stood tall and defiant. Her dark hair fell in waves around her shoulders, and her green eyes blazed with fury rather than fear. When a Zephyrian guard struck an elderly human man, she'd stepped forward without hesitation, placing herself between them. The guard had backhanded her across the face, but she didn't flinch. She just stared at the alien with such intensity that even the battle-hardened warrior seemed uncomfortable. There was something about her that made Marcus's chest tighten with an emotion he couldn't name. That was 3 days ago. For 3 days, Marcus had followed the Zephyrian transport ship in his small maintenance pod, staying hidden in its sensor shadow. For 3 days, he'd planned this rescue mission that everyone would call suicide. Now, crouched in the bowels of the enemy ship with guards converging on his position, Marcus was starting to think everyone might be right. The detention cells were just ahead. Marcus could see the energy barriers glowing blue in the dim light. Most of the human prisoners were huddled together in the central cell, but she was alone in a smaller one at the end of the corridor. Why was she separated from the others? A plasma bolt struck the wall inches from his head, snapping him back to the immediate danger. Marcus spun around the corner and fired twice, dropping the lead guard. The remaining Zephyrians dove for cover, buying him precious seconds. He sprinted toward the detention cells, pulling the hacking device from his belt. His hands shook as he connected it to the cell's control panel. Come on, come on. The woman looked up as he worked, and for a moment their eyes met through the energy barrier. Up close, she was even more striking than he'd thought. But there was something else. Something that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. The way she carried herself, the calm authority in her expression even as a prisoner. She wasn't just another civilian caught in the wrong place. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice carrying an accent he couldn't place. "Someone who's about to get us both killed if this doesn't work," Marcus replied, sweat dripping onto the control panel. The hacking device beeped softly as it worked through the alien security protocols. "You shouldn't have come here," she said, but her tone was grateful rather than angry. "This ship carries a full battalion of Imperial guards. You cannot fight them all." "Yeah, well, I'm pretty good at doing stupid things," Marcus said. The device beeped 3 times and the energy barrier flickered out. "Lady, I don't know who you are, but nobody deserves what these lizards have planned." She stepped out of the cell with fluid grace, and Marcus noticed she moved like a trained fighter. "My name is Lyra," she said simply. "Marcus, can you handle a weapon?" Instead of answering, she smoothly took the plasma rifle from his hands and checked its charge with practiced efficiency. 1 shot remaining. Not ideal, but workable. The sound of approaching guards echoed down the corridor. Marcus pulled out his backup pistol and gestured toward a ventilation grate he'd identified during his reconnaissance. "This way. I've got a pod hidden in docking bay 7. As they moved through the ship's maintenance tunnels, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something important. Lyra moved with the confidence of someone who knew exactly where she was going, despite never having been on this ship before. She seemed to understand the layout instinctively, guiding them through passages that Marcus had spent hours mapping. "You're not just a prisoner, are you?" he asked as they paused at an intersection. Lyra glanced back at him, and for a moment something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or calculation. "Why do you say that?" "The way you move. The way you knew which corridor to take back there. You're either military or..." He trailed off, not wanting to voice his suspicion that she might be working with the Zephyrians. "I was a teacher," she said quietly, "before the war. I taught tactical studies at the academy. That explained some of it, but Marcus still felt like she was holding something back." They reached the docking bay access tunnel, and he could see his small pod through the grating. Just a few more minutes and they'd be free. The sound of metal rending filled the air as Zephyrian forces blasted through the tunnel behind them. Marcus kicked out the grate and helped Lyra through, then followed her into the docking bay. His pod was exactly where he'd left it, a battered maintenance craft that looked like it belonged in a scrapyard. "This is your escape plan?" Lyra asked, raising an eyebrow. "She's faster than she looks," Marcus said defensively, hitting the pod's startup sequence. The engines whined to life just as the first guards burst into the docking bay. They scrambled into the pod as plasma fire erupted around them. Marcus slammed the acceleration controls forward, and the little craft shot out of the docking bay like a bullet. The Zephyrian ship's weapons tried to track them, but Marcus had disabled the bay's targeting systems during his infiltration. As they fled into the darkness of space, Marcus glanced at Lyra. She was staring back at the massive Imperial warship with an expression he couldn't read. There was sadness there and something that looked almost like regret. "Thank you," she said softly. "You risked everything for a stranger. That kind of courage is rare." Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks. Anyone would have done the same thing. "No," Lyra said, turning to meet his eyes. "They wouldn't have. And that's what makes humans so remarkable." The way she said humans, as if she were somehow separate from them, sent a chill down Marcus's spine. But before he could ask what she meant, proximity alarms began screaming. 3 Zephyrian pursuit ships had launched and were gaining fast. "Hold on," Marcus said, pushing the pod's engines to their limits. "This is going to get rough." The maintenance pod shuddered as another plasma blast struck its rear shields. Marcus gritted his teeth and threw the small craft into a spinning dive, using a drifting asteroid as cover. The Zephyrian pursuit ships were faster and better armed, but Marcus knew these asteroid fields like the back of his hand. "Warning, rear shield at 15%, the pod's computer announced in its annoyingly calm voice. "Yeah, I noticed," Marcus snapped, pulling the craft through a narrow gap between 2 spinning rocks. The lead Zephyrian ship tried to follow and scraped its hull against the asteroid, sending sparks flying through space. Lyra gripped her seat's armrests but remained remarkably calm for someone in her first space chase. "How well do you know this region?" she asked. "Better than anyone," Marcus replied, banking sharply around a cluster of ice chunks. "I've been running maintenance routes through here for 5 years. These lizards are flying blind." One of the pursuit ships managed to get a clean shot, and the blast sent the pod tumbling. Marcus fought to regain control as warning lights flashed across the instrument panel. The artificial gravity fluctuated, making his stomach lurch. "Port engine offline," the computer reported. "Structural damage to sections 4 through 7. Marcus cursed under his breath. With only one engine, they couldn't outrun the Zephyrians much longer. He needed a plan, and fast. "There," Lyra said suddenly, pointing through the viewport at what looked like empty space. "That nebula." "Can your ship handle the radiation?" Marcus followed her gaze and saw the faint shimmer of a hydrogen cloud in the distance. It was barely visible to the naked eye, just a slight distortion in the starfield. How had she spotted it so quickly? "It'll fry our electronics if we stay too long," he said. "But yeah, this bucket has enough shielding for a quick run-through." The Zephyrians use different sensor technology, Lyra explained as another plasma bolt streaked past their hull. "That nebula will blind them completely, but human sensors can penetrate it." "At least partially." Marcus stared at her. "How do you know about Zephyrian sensor technology?" But there was no time for explanations. The remaining pursuit ships were closing in, and their next salvo would probably finish the job. Marcus angled toward the nebula and pushed the single working engine to its maximum output. They plunged into the glowing cloud, and immediately the pod's sensors went haywire. Static filled the communications channels, and the navigation display flickered between readings that made no sense. But they were hidden from their pursuers, at least for now. "They've stopped following," Marcus observed, watching the tactical display. The Zephyrian ships had pulled up short at the nebula's edge. "Smart. Their ships can't handle this kind of radiation." Lyra was studying the sensor readings with intense concentration. "We need to reach the far side before they circle around," she said. "They'll try to intercept us when we emerge. How do you know what they'll do?" Marcus asked, but she was already focused on the navigation console, her fingers dancing over controls she shouldn't have known how to operate. "Bear left 15 degrees, she said. "There's a clearer path through the radiation field." Marcus wanted to ask how she could possibly know that, but the alternative was flying blind through a cloud that could cook them alive. He followed her directions, and sure enough, the radiation levels dropped noticeably. They flew in tense silence for several minutes, the nebula's eerie glow washing over the cockpit in waves of blue and green. Marcus found himself stealing glances at Lyra, trying to figure out what she wasn't telling him. Her knowledge of Zephyrian tactics and technology went far beyond what any civilian teacher should possess. "You're not who you claim to be," he said finally. Lyra's hand stilled on the console. "I told you the truth. I was a teacher. Maybe. But you're something else too." Marcus kept his voice gentle but firm. "The way you spotted that nebula, your knowledge of alien sensor systems, the way you move like a soldier. I'm not stupid, Lyra. Who are you really?" For a long moment she didn't answer. The only sound was the pod's struggling engine and the crackle of radiation against their shields. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I was engaged to a Zephyrian prince," she said. 3 years ago. Marcus nearly flew them into an asteroid." "You were what?" "It was supposed to be a political marriage," Lyra continued, staring out at the swirling nebula. "A symbol of peace between our species. I spent 2 years on Zephyrus Prime, learning their culture, their language, their military protocols. What happened?" Lyra's jaw tightened. "I discovered what they really thought of humans. We weren't potential allies, we were livestock to be managed. The marriage was just a way to make human colonies more compliant. They were planning to use me as a puppet ruler once they conquered Earth." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the nebula's radiation. "So you escaped?" "I tried to warn Earth's government, but the prince's father had already begun his campaign to discredit me. By the time I reached human space, I was branded a traitor who had betrayed her own species for alien lovers." Her voice turned bitter. "So I disappeared, became just another refugee working on the outer stations. That's why they separated you from the other prisoners," Marcus realized. "They recognized you." "Prince Zack wants me back," Lyra said. "Not for love, for revenge. I humiliated his family by rejecting their generous offer of marriage. In Zephyrian culture, that's an insult that can only be answered with blood." The nebula began to thin around them, and Marcus could see clear space ahead. But he could also see 3 ships waiting in formation at the nebula's edge, more Zephyrian vessels that had circled around while they were hidden. "Looks like your ex-fiancé really wants you back," Marcus said grimly. "He'll destroy your ship rather than let me escape again," Lyra warned. "Marcus, you should surrender. Tell them I forced you to help me. They might let you live." Marcus laughed, surprising himself. "Lady, I've come this far. I'm not backing down now." He began plotting an intercept course with the nearest enemy ship. "Besides, I've got an idea. Please tell me it doesn't involve ramming them." "Only partly." Marcus grinned and pushed the pod's remaining engine beyond its safe operating limits. "I'm going to need you to take over navigation. Can you plot a course to the Kepler station?" "That's 5 jumps through hyperspace," Lyra protested. "This ship barely has enough fuel for 1 jump." "Trust me," Marcus said, angling directly toward the center Zephyrian ship. "And when I say now, activate the emergency beacon." The enemy vessels spread out to surround them as they emerged from the nebula. Marcus could see weapon ports opening along their hulls, preparing to disable rather than destroy his ship. They definitely wanted Lyra alive. "Incoming transmission," the computer announced. "Put it through," Marcus said. The view screen flickered to life, showing a reptilian face that was almost beautiful in its alien symmetry. Golden scales caught the light and intelligent amber eyes fixed on Lyra with unmistakable possessiveness. "My beloved," the prince said in accented English, "you have led me quite a chase, but this ends now. Surrender yourself and I promise your human friend will die quickly." "Still a charmer, I see," Lyra replied coldly. "Some things never change, Zack." "You will address me by my proper title," the prince snapped, his calm facade cracking. "I am your betrothed and you will show respect." "I'm nobody's property," Lyra said. "Not yours, not anyone's." Marcus watched the tactical display as the Zephyrian ships closed in. "Almost in position, humans," Prince Zack said with disgust. "So stubborn." So primitive. When we are wed, I will teach you proper obedience. When hell freezes over, Marcus muttered. Now, he told Lyra. She hit the emergency beacon just as Marcus fired their last torpedo. Not at the enemy ships, but at a massive asteroid floating nearby. The explosion sent chunks of rock flying in all directions, and in the chaos, Marcus activated the pod's hyperspace drive. The last thing they saw before jumping was Prince Zach's furious face as their emergency beacon began broadcasting on all human frequencies, alerting every ship in the sector to their location. The hyperspace jump lasted only 30 seconds before the pod's overloaded engine gave out completely. They dropped back into normal space near a small mining station that Marcus recognized as Outpost Delta 7. Not exactly the Kepler station he'd hoped for, but at least they were alive. Engines dead, Marcus announced, running diagnostics on their crippled systems. We're running on battery power only. Lyra was monitoring the communications array. Your emergency beacon worked. I'm picking up responses from 3 human patrol ships. They'll be here within the hour. Marcus leaned back in his pilot's seat, suddenly feeling the exhaustion of the past few days catch up with him. They'd made it. Somehow, against all odds, they'd escaped the Zephyrian Empire's most wanted prince and his fleet. So what happens now? He asked. Lyra's expression grew troubled. Now you become a target. Zach won't forget what you did today. He'll send assassins, bounty hunters, anyone who can reach human space. Let them come, Marcus said with more confidence than he felt. Earth's military can handle a few alien hit squads. You don't understand, Lyra said, turning to face him fully. This isn't just about me anymore. By helping me escape, you've given the Zephyrians a perfect excuse to declare war on humanity. They'll claim you kidnapped a member of their royal family. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Royal family? I thought you said he was just a prince. He is, but... Lyra hesitated, as if weighing how much to reveal. Zach is the Emperor's youngest son. His father dotes on him. When he learns what happened... Oh, great, Marcus muttered. So I didn't just rescue a prisoner. I basically kicked a hornet's nest the size of a planet. Before Lyra could respond, the communication system crackled to life. Unknown vessel, this is Captain Sarah Morrison of the UES Defiant. Please identify yourself. Marcus activated the transmitter. Captain Morrison, this is Marcus Chen. I'm broadcasting my maintenance engineer credentials now. I've got a rescued prisoner aboard who needs immediate protection. There was a pause before Morrison's voice returned, sounding surprised. Marcus Chen? According to our records, you died in the attack on Trading Station Omega-3 4 days ago. I got better, Marcus replied dryly. Captain, we need to dock immediately. We've got maybe 20 minutes of power left. And there are some things you need to know about the Zephyrian Empire. An hour later, Marcus found himself in the Defiant's briefing room, facing a table full of military officers who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Captain Morrison was a stern woman with graying hair and tired eyes, clearly someone who'd seen too much war in recent years. Let me get this straight, she said, reviewing the report on her tablet. You infiltrated a Zephyrian detention ship, rescued a single prisoner, and in the process may have given them grounds to declare war on all of humanity? That's about the size of it, Marcus admitted. Though in my defense, I didn't know she was engaged to alien royalty when I broke her out. I was never truly engaged, Lyra interjected. The betrothal was arranged without my consent. Under human law, I had every right to refuse. Zephyrian law is somewhat different, Captain Morrison observed. According to our xenology experts, refusing a royal marriage proposal is considered an act of war. That's barbaric, said Commander Torres, the ship's tactical officer. It's their culture, Morrison replied. Right or wrong, we have to deal with it. She turned to Lyra. Miss, I'm sorry. What did you say your last name was? Lyra glanced at Marcus, then back at the captain. I didn't. It's Lyra Voss. The reaction was immediate. Every officer in the room suddenly sat up straighter, and Captain Morrison's tablet clattered to the table. Did you say Voss? Morrison asked in a strangled voice. Yes, is there a problem? Marcus looked around the room in confusion. Should that name mean something to me? Commander Torres answered, his voice filled with awe. Lyra Voss is a legend. She's the woman who saved the Terran colonies during the Proxima War. Single-handedly, held off a Centauri invasion fleet for 6 hours until reinforcements arrived. That was 15 years ago, another officer added. She was supposed to be dead, Marcus stared at Lyra, who suddenly looked very uncomfortable with the attention. "You're a war hero." "I was a pilot," she said quietly. "A very lucky pilot who happened to be in the right place at the wrong time." "Lucky?" Captain Morrison laughed incredulously. "You destroyed 3 battleships with a single fighter craft. The Centauri still use your tactics in their military academies, as examples of what not to let humans do to you." "You said you were a teacher," Marcus said, feeling like the ground was shifting beneath his feet. "I was, after the war." Lyra's voice carried old pain. "I taught at the academy because I couldn't fly anymore. Combat stress syndrome. Every time I got in a cockpit, I'd freeze up." The room fell silent. Marcus began to understand why Lyra had seemed so familiar with military protocols and alien technology. She wasn't just a teacher who'd gotten caught up in political intrigue. She was one of humanity's greatest military heroes. "This changes everything," Captain Morrison said finally. "If the Zephyrians have been holding Lyra Voss prisoner, Earth Command needs to know immediately. And if Prince Zack was trying to force her into marriage, it would be the perfect way to neutralize humanity's most effective tactical mind," Commander Torres finished. "Keep her as a trophy wife and make sure she never fights against them." Marcus felt a surge of anger at the thought of Lyra being used that way. "So what do we do now?" "Now we get you both to Earth as quickly as possible," Morrison said. "Command will want to debrief Miss Voss extensively. And you, Mr. Chen, are going to need protection. The moment this story gets out, you'll be the most wanted man in Zephyrian space." "Story?" Marcus asked. "Think about it," Morrison explained. "A simple maintenance worker risks everything to save a legendary war hero from alien captivity. The media will eat it up. You'll be famous across human space within a week." Marcus groaned. He'd just wanted to help someone in trouble. Now he was apparently going to be a celebrity and a target for alien assassins. "There's something else," Lyra said quietly. "Something I haven't told you about my time on Zephyros Prime." The officers leaned forward, sensing important information. "I learned about their long-term plans for humanity," she continued. "The marriage proposal wasn't just about humiliating me. It was part of a larger strategy. They're planning to invade Earth within the year." "We suspected as much," Captain Morrison said grimly. "Our intelligence suggests they've been massing fleets near the border." "It's worse than you think," Lyra said. "They have human collaborators, government officials who've been feeding them information about our defenses." Marcus felt his blood run cold. "Traitors? People who think humanity can't win a war against the Empire," Lyra explained. "They'd rather surrender now and hope for mercy than fight and lose everything." "Over my dead body," Morrison said fiercely. "Humanity doesn't surrender. We never have and we never will." "That's what I'm counting on," Lyra said. "Because there's one more thing the Zephyrians don't know about humans." "What's that?" Marcus asked. For the first time since he'd met her, Lyra smiled, a fierce, predatory expression that reminded him why she was considered a legend. "We're very good at doing impossible things when someone we care about is threatened. And thanks to Marcus here, they've just threatened all of us." The briefing room erupted in discussion as the officers began planning their next moves, but Marcus barely heard them. He was too busy wondering what he'd gotten himself into and whether humanity was ready for the war that was coming. One thing was certain. His quiet life as a maintenance engineer was over forever. Earth's orbital defense stations had never looked more beautiful to Marcus as their transport ship approached the blue marble of humanity's homeworld. After a week of hyperspace jumps and military escorts, they'd finally made it to the one place in the galaxy where humans outnumbered their enemies by billions to one. "Nervous?" Lyra asked from the seat beside him. She'd been quiet during most of the journey, lost in thought as she prepared for what awaited them. "Terrified," Marcus admitted. "I fix air recyclers and gravity generators. I don't belong in whatever's about to happen down there." "Neither do I," Lyra said softly. "I haven't been in a command situation for 10 years. What if I've forgotten everything? What if the stress syndrome comes back?" Marcus looked at her in surprise. The legendary Lyra Voss doubting herself? "Hey, you got us out of that Zephyrian ship. You spotted that nebula when I was ready to give up. You haven't forgotten anything." Before she could respond, the ship's captain announced their final approach to Luna Command, the massive military complex built into the moon's surface. Marcus pressed his face to the viewport. watching as dozens of warships moved in formation around them. Earth was already preparing for war. The debriefing took place in a conference room deep underground, surrounded by enough military brass to stock a small army. Admiral Rebecca Foster, head of Earth Defense Command, led the session. She was a small woman with steel gray hair and the kind of presence that made even seasoned officers stand straighter when she entered a room. "Let's start with the basics," Admiral Foster said, activating a holographic display that showed the local galactic sector. "Miss Voss, you've had unprecedented access to Zephyrian military planning. What can you tell us about their invasion timeline?" Lyra stood and moved to the hologram, her teacher's instincts taking over despite the high-stakes setting. "They're planning a three-pronged assault," she said, manipulating the display to show fleet movements. "The main force will strike directly at Earth while smaller fleets attack our outer colonies to prevent reinforcement. How many ships are we talking about?" asked General Martinez, the head of Colonial Defense. "Approximately 800 vessels in the primary fleet alone," Lyra replied, "including 12 dreadnoughts and the Emperor's personal flagship, the Eternal Vengeance." Worried murmurs filled the room. Earth's entire navy consisted of maybe 300 ships, and most of those were patrol vessels, not warships. "However," Lyra continued, "they have a critical weakness. Zephyrian military doctrine relies heavily on overwhelming force and intimidation. They've never faced an enemy that fights back effectively after the initial assault. Their commanders lack experience with prolonged campaigns." "You're saying they're glass cannons?" Admiral Foster asked. "Exactly. Hit them hard enough in the right places, and their entire command structure will collapse into chaos." Marcus watched the proceedings with growing amazement. This wasn't the same woman who'd been teaching basic tactics to Academy cadets. This was the brilliant strategist who'd held off an entire invasion fleet single-handedly. Whatever had been holding her back was gone now, burned away by necessity and anger. "What about their human collaborators?" asked Director Hayes from Earth Intelligence. "Do you have names?" Lyra's expression darkened. "Some. Senator Williams from the Colonial Committee is definitely compromised. Admiral Harrison in the 4th Fleet has been feeding them ship movement data. And..." She hesitated. "Go on," Admiral Foster encouraged. "President Chen's Chief of Staff, David Morrison. He's been the main conduit for information." The room erupted. Morrison was one of the most trusted people in Earth's government, a man with access to every classified briefing and strategic planning session. "Are you certain?" Director Hayes demanded. "I saw the intelligence reports personally," Lyra said firmly. "Prince Zack showed them to me as proof that humanity would never be able to resist the Empire effectively. Morrison has been providing detailed assessments of our defensive capabilities for over a year." Admiral Foster's face was grim as she absorbed this information. "We'll deal with the traitors later. Right now, we need to focus on the military situation. Based on current intelligence, the invasion will begin in approximately 6 weeks. That's not enough time to build new ships or train additional crews, but it might be enough time to prepare a surprise," Lyra said thoughtfully. "Admiral, how many civilian ships could be converted to military use in that time frame?" "Converted how?" "Mining ships, cargo haulers, even luxury liners. Anything with a decent engine and enough space for weapons platforms. The Zephyrians will expect to face our regular navy. They won't be prepared for unconventional tactics." General Martinez looked skeptical. "You're talking about sending civilians into battle against trained military forces." "I'm talking about using every advantage we have," Lyra replied. "Humans are adapters. We take whatever's available and make it work. The Zephyrians can't conceive of that kind of flexibility." Marcus found himself speaking up before he could stop himself. "She's right. I've seen civilian maintenance crews jury-rig solutions that would make military engineers cry. Give us the right tools and enough motivation and we can turn a garbage scow into a battleship." Every eye in the room turned to him, and Marcus felt his face burn with embarrassment. "Sorry, I probably shouldn't have said anything." "No, Mr. Chen," Admiral Foster said with interest. "Please continue. You have practical experience with civilian ship modifications." "Well, yes, ma'am. I've been rigging maintenance pods and cargo haulers for 5 years. Most civilian ships have much more redundant systems than military vessels. We have to since we can't always rely on backup, and the modular design means you can swap out entire sections pretty easily." "Could you convert a mining ship to carry torpedoes?" Marcus thought about it. "Sure. Remove the ore processing equipment, reinforce the cargo bays, add some targeting computers. It wouldn't be pretty, but it would work. Admiral Foster looked at Lyra. What do you think? Could this kind of improvised fleet make a difference? It could do more than that, Lyra said, excitement building in her voice. It could win the war. But we'd need to coordinate the entire operation perfectly. One mistake and we lose everything. Then we'd better not make any mistakes, Admiral Foster said. She turned to address the room. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to attempt something unprecedented. We're going to defend Earth using a combination of regular military forces and hastily converted civilian vessels, coordinated by a legendary tactical genius and a maintenance engineer who specializes in impossible repairs. It sounds crazy when you put it like that, Marcus muttered. Crazy is what humans do best, General Martinez said with a sudden grin. Count me in. Over the following days, Marcus found himself at the center of the largest military conversion project in human history. Shipyards across the solar system worked around the clock to transform civilian vessels into weapons of war. Cargo haulers became torpedo boats. Mining ships turned into mobile weapon platforms. Even passenger liners were fitted with defensive systems and used as command vessels. Lyra worked tirelessly to coordinate the defensive strategy, her tactical brilliance fully restored by the pressure of defending her species. She and Marcus spent long hours together, planning modifications and discussing strategies. Somewhere in those late-night planning sessions, Marcus realized that his feelings for her had grown far beyond simple attraction. You know, he said one evening as they reviewed modification schedules, when this is all over, I'd like to ask you to dinner, somewhere that doesn't involve alien princes or impending invasions. Lyra looked up from her tablets, surprised. Marcus, I know, he said quickly. War hero, maintenance engineer. It's not exactly a fairy tale match. But I care about you, Lyra. More than I probably should. For a moment, her professional mask slipped, and he saw something vulnerable and hopeful in her expression. I care about you too, she admitted. But there's something you need to know. Something I haven't told anyone. Before she could explain, alarms began blaring throughout the command center. Admiral Foster's voice echoed over the intercom. All personnel to battle stations. Long-range sensors have detected the Zephyrian invasion fleet. They're coming. Marcus and Lyra looked at each other, knowing that whatever she'd been about to tell him would have to wait. The war for humanity's survival was about to begin, and they were as ready as they'd ever be. The question was, would their improvised defenses be enough to stop the greatest military force the galaxy had ever seen? The main tactical display in Luna Command showed a sight that would have terrified anyone who didn't understand human stubbornness. 800 Zephyrian warships approached in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming like deadly jewels against the black of space. Facing them was humanity's desperate fleet. 230 military vessels supported by over 400 converted civilian ships that had no business being in a battle. Final. Count from all sectors, reported Commander Singh from the communications station. We have 647 vessels ready for combat. Civilian conversions are reporting green across the board. Admiral Foster nodded grimly. And the Zephyrians? 812 ships confirmed, Singh replied, including those 12 dreadnoughts and the Emperor's flagship. Marcus stood beside Lyra at the tactical planning station, feeling completely out of place among the military personnel. His converted maintenance pod had been designated as a command and reconnaissance vessel, which sounded much more impressive than it actually was. Nervous? Lyra asked quietly, echoing their conversation from days earlier. Beyond terrified, Marcus admitted. But also more excited? Is that weird? Not at all, Lyra smiled. It means you're human. We get excited about impossible odds. Admiral Foster's voice cut across the command center. All ships, this is Luna Command. You know what's at stake here. We're not just fighting for Earth. We're fighting for the right of humanity to exist as a free species. Make them remember that humans don't go quietly. The Zephyrian fleet had arranged itself in their traditional attack formation. A massive wedge designed to punch through enemy defenses and spread terror among surviving forces. It was a formation that had conquered dozens of worlds and brought entire species to their knees. They're not adapting, Lyra observed, studying the enemy formation. Prince Zack is commanding the assault personally, and he's using textbook Imperial tactics. Is that good or bad? Marcus asked. Good for us. It means they're underestimating human creativity. Lyra activated her communications headset. All fleet commanders, this is tactical command. Initiate Pattern Omega in 30 seconds. Pattern Omega was Lyra's masterpiece, a defensive strategy that looked like chaos but was actually carefully coordinated. Instead of meeting the enemy head-on, the human fleet scattered into seemingly random groups, each following flight paths that made no apparent sense. The Zephyrian formation wavered as their commanders tried to understand what the humans were doing. In their experience, lesser species either fled in terror or formed desperate defensive lines that could be easily broken. This looked like panic, but something felt wrong. "First wave incoming," reported Commander Singh. "Zephyrian fighters are launching." Thousands of sleek alien fighters poured from the enemy carriers, moving to engage the scattered human vessels. But as they closed in, Lyra's strategy became clear. "Execute Phoenix Protocol," she commanded. The converted civilian ships suddenly revealed their true nature. Cargo haulers that had been fleeing in apparent terror spun around and launched clouds of mining charges, crude but effective against fighter formations. Passenger liners that looked helpless activated hidden weapon batteries and began picking off enemy escorts. Even Marcus's maintenance pod played its part, using industrial cutting lasers to slice through fighter hulls. "Direct hit on enemy cruiser Dominant Will," someone reported with excitement. The mining ship Prosperity just rammed it with a cargo hold full of explosives. Admiral Foster allowed herself a small smile. Captain Morrison always was creative. The first wave of the assault dissolved into chaos as human ships used tactics that violated every rule of civilized warfare. Zephyrian fighters found themselves chasing targets that suddenly became lethal. Bombers expecting easy prey instead flew into coordinated crossfires from vessels that shouldn't have been able to fight back. But Marcus knew this was just the beginning. The real test would come when the dreadnoughts engaged. "Enemy capital ships are advancing," Commander Singh announced. "They're targeting our military vessels specifically." This was the moment Lyra had been waiting for. "All civilian vessels withdraw to designated positions. Military fleet form up for Pattern Delta." The human warships moved into a tight defensive formation around Earth's orbital platforms, presenting what looked like a last desperate stand. The Zephyrian dreadnoughts, massive ships the size of small cities, began their final approach. "They're taking the bait," Lyra said with satisfaction. "Marcus, is your pod ready for the reconnaissance run?" Marcus checked his systems one more time. His little maintenance craft had been equipped with the most advanced sensors Earth could provide, but it was still just a small, fragile ship about to fly through the middle of the largest space battle in human history. "As ready as I'll ever be," he said. "Remember, stay close to the asteroid field. Use the rocks for cover, and whatever you do, don't let them get a target lock on you." Marcus nodded, understanding his role in Lyra's plan. Someone had to get close enough to the enemy flagship to confirm the intelligence they'd gathered about its weaknesses, and somehow that someone was a maintenance engineer who'd never fired a shot in anger before last week. "Marcus," Lyra said as he prepared to launch. "Be careful, She paused, something unreadable in her expression. "I can't lose you too." Before he could ask what she meant, proximity alarms began screaming. The Zephyrian dreadnoughts had opened fire, and space filled with energy beams that could vaporize a cruiser in seconds. Marcus launched his pod into the maelstrom, weaving between laser blasts and debris from destroyed ships. Behind him, he could see the human defensive line taking terrible punishment, but they were buying time for the real attack to begin. As he approached the enemy flagship, Marcus began to understand the true scope of Lyra's plan. The scattered civilian ships weren't retreating. They were repositioning, moving into attack positions that would put them behind and around the Zephyrian formation when the moment was right. "Luna Command, this is Chen," he reported over his secure channel. "I have eyes on the target, confirming weak points at the engine pylons in the ventral command section." "Copy that, Marcus. Get clear. Phoenix Rising is about to commence." Marcus pulled his pod behind a large asteroid just as the real battle began. From their hidden positions throughout the asteroid field and behind orbital debris, nearly 300 converted civilian ships struck at once. They hit the Zephyrian fleet from every direction, targeting the gaps in their formation that Lyra had identified during her time as a prisoner. The enemy had been expecting a desperate last stand. Instead, they found themselves surrounded by an enemy that refused to play by the rules. A massive explosion lit up space as the mining ship New Horizon detonated its entire cargo hold against the side of a dreadnought. The alien ship's shields held, but the blast sent it spinning out of formation. All civilian vessels commence pattern tsunami, Lyra ordered. Now the true madness began. Human ships started ramming attacks, using their superior numbers to overwhelm individual enemy vessels. Cargo haulers loaded with explosives turned themselves into massive torpedoes. Passenger liners used their luxurious shields to protect smaller attack craft. "They're breaking formation," Commander Singh reported with excitement. "The enemy fleet is falling apart." But Marcus could see something else from his position near the flagship. Prince Zack wasn't retreating. He was repositioning for a direct assault on Earth itself. "Luna Command, the flagship is making a run for the planet. He's going to bypass the fleet entirely." "Confirmed," Admiral Foster replied grimly. "All available ships intercept course for Earth. We cannot let that ship reach the surface." As Marcus watched the massive alien vessel accelerate toward humanity's homeworld, he realized that all their clever tactics and desperate courage might not be enough. The Eternal Vengeance was the largest ship in space, armed with weapons that could crack continents. And there was something else. Something in the way Prince Zack was positioning his ship that reminded Marcus of the intelligence reports Lyra had shared. The prince wasn't just planning to attack Earth. He was planning to do something that would make humanity's surrender inevitable. "Lyra," Marcus said over their private channel, "I think Zack's going to try to capture you during the attack. That's why he's heading for Earth instead of finishing the fleet battle." There was a long pause before she responded. "I know, and Marcus, there's something I need to tell you about who I really am. Something that changes everything." The massive Zephyrian flagship cut through space like a dagger aimed at Earth's heart. Its weapons charging for what could be humanity's final hour. Marcus pushed his maintenance pod to its limits, desperately trying to keep up with the alien dreadnought while staying hidden in its sensor shadow. "Lyra, whatever you need to tell me now would be a good time," he said over their private communication channel, watching as Earth grew larger in his viewport. "I'm not just a war hero." "Marcus!" Lyra's voice came through, tight with emotion. "I'm not even just human." Marcus nearly flew his pod into an asteroid. "What do you mean, not just human?" "My mother was human," Lyra continued, her words coming faster now as the urgency of their situation pressed against them. "My father was from a species called the Architects, an ancient race that vanished from the galaxy thousands of years ago. They were the ones who designed most of the hyperspace networks, the ones who left behind the technology that all modern civilizations use." "That's impossible," Marcus breathed. "The Architects are myths, legends. No, they're real. And they didn't vanish. They went into hiding when they realized what their technology was being used for. Wars, conquests, oppression." Lyra's voice carried generations of hidden pain. "My father was one of the last living in disguise among humans. He fell in love with my mother and broke the most sacred law of his people by having a child." Marcus tried to process this revelation, while simultaneously dodging debris from the ongoing fleet battle behind them. "So you're, what, half alien? Half architect? It's why I can understand technology intuitively. Why I could spot that nebula so quickly. Why I knew Zephyrian military protocols almost instinctively. Architect minds work differently. We see patterns that others miss. And Prince Zack knows this? He suspects. That's the real reason he wants me. Not just for revenge, but because an architect mind could give the Zephyrian Empire control over every hyperspace route in the galaxy. They could cut off entire star systems, trap species on their homeworlds, become the ultimate galactic power. Marcus felt sick. That's why you were really on that prison ship. They weren't just holding you, they were studying you. Yes. And if Zack captures me now during this battle, he'll have everything he needs. My genetic material, my knowledge, my abilities. He'll turn me into a weapon against my own species. The flagship began its descent toward Earth's atmosphere, and Marcus could see defensive platforms trying desperately to intercept it. But the alien vessel's shields were too strong, its armor too thick. Nothing in Earth's arsenal could stop it. There has to be something we can do, Marcus said desperately. There is, Lyra replied, and something in her tone made his blood run cold. But you're not going to like it. Before she could explain, Admiral Foster's voice crackled across all channels. All ships, all ships. The enemy flagship is attempting to land at Luna Command. Repeat, they're trying to land at our primary headquarters. All available forces converge on the moon immediately. Marcus watched in horror as the massive alien ship settled onto the lunar surface like a predatory bird, its landing legs crushing observation towers and communications arrays. Immediately, hatches opened along its hull and thousands of Zephyrian shock troops poured out, advancing toward the underground command center where Lyra was coordinating the defense. "They're going to break through the outer defenses within minutes," Commander Singh reported, his voice strained with exhaustion and fear. "We don't have enough ground forces to hold them." "Yes, we do," Lyra said quietly, her voice carrying across the command center. "We have something they don't expect." Marcus watched through his pod's cameras as Lyra stood up from her tactical station. Around her, the command center's staff looked at her with confusion and growing alarm. "What are you doing?" Admiral Foster demanded. "What I should have done 15 years ago," Lyra replied. "What my father taught me before he died." She placed her hands on the central tactical display, and suddenly the entire command center filled with a soft blue light. The holographic projections began shifting and changing, showing not just the current battle but patterns of energy and movement that no human technology should have been able to detect. "My God," Admiral Foster whispered. "The stories were true. You really are one of them." "Half of one," Lyra corrected, her eyes now glowing with the same blue light that filled the room. "But half is enough." Marcus watched in amazement as Lyra's consciousness seemed to expand beyond the confines of the command center. Through the tactical display, he could see her awareness touching every ship in the human fleet, every defensive platform, every piece of technology in the Sol system. "I can feel them all," she said, her voice taking on an otherworldly quality. "Every human ship, every brave soul fighting for our survival. And I can do something the Zephyrians never expected." The blue light began spreading beyond the command center, flowing through Luna Command's computer networks and communication systems. On his pod's instruments, Marcus watched as something extraordinary happened. Every human ship in the fleet began moving with perfect coordination, as if controlled by a single brilliant mind. "She's networking them," he realized. "She's connecting every ship's tactical system through some kind of architect technology." The effect on the battle was immediate and dramatic. Human vessels that had been fighting desperately individual battles suddenly began moving as one unified force. Damaged ships withdrew at exactly the right moment while fresh vessels moved in to cover them. Weapons fire became surgically precise, targeting weak points that individual gunners could never have identified. But the effort was taking its toll on Lyra. Marcus could see her physical form beginning to blur around the edges, as if maintaining this connection was literally pulling her apart. "Lyra, you have to stop," he said over their private channel. "This is killing you." "I know," she replied, her mental voice fainter now. "But it's the only way. The Zephyrians brought their entire fleet here expecting to face divided, chaotic humans. Instead, they're fighting a single organism with 600 arms." Above Luna's surface, the tide of battle was turning. Zephyrian ships found themselves outmaneuvered and outgunned by opponents who seemed to predict their every move. The alien fleet's rigid formation, which had conquered dozens of worlds, became a liability against an enemy that moved like water around stone. "Enemy fleet is breaking off," Commander Singh reported with disbelief. "They're actually retreating." But Prince Zack wasn't done yet. The massive flagship began lifting off from the lunar surface, its weapons charging for a final, devastating strike at Earth itself. "If he can't have me alive," Lyra said weakly, the blue light around her beginning to flicker, "he'll destroy everything rather than admit defeat." Marcus looked at his pod's weapon systems, a few mining charges and some industrial lasers that were barely adequate for cutting metal. Against the flagship's armor, they would be useless. But there was something else, something the prince wouldn't expect. "Lyra, can you maintain the network connection if I get close to the flagship?" "Yes, but why?" "Marcus, that ship has enough firepower to destroy continents. Your pod won't even scratch its hull." "I'm not planning to attack the hull," Marcus said, pushing his engines to maximum power. "I'm planning to get inside." Before anyone could stop him, Marcus accelerated directly toward the alien flagship. Behind him, he could hear Admiral Foster shouting orders to intercept him, but no human ship could match his pod's small size and maneuverability. As he approached the massive vessel, Marcus could see exactly what he was looking for. The same type of maintenance access ports that every large ship had, designed for external repairs and emergency evacuations. "This is insane," he muttered, lining up his approach vector. But then again, that's what humans do best. The flagship's point defense systems opened fire, filling space around him with deadly energy beams. But Marcus had spent 5 years flying maintenance routes through asteroid fields and debris clouds. This was just another day at the office if the office was trying to kill him. He slammed his pod against the flagship's hull and activated the emergency docking clamps. Immediately, alarms began screaming inside the alien ship as its systems detected the unauthorized intrusion. "I'm in," Marcus reported. "Lyra, I'm going to need you to guide me to the ship's main reactor. If I can overload it from the inside, you'll die," she said simply. "Maybe. But everyone dies if I don't try." Marcus began cutting through the access port with his industrial lasers. "Besides, I've got the galaxy's smartest tactical genius watching my back. What could go wrong?" Despite everything, he heard Lyra laugh, a sound that made all the terror and chaos worth it. "You're impossible, Marcus Chen. But you're right. Let's go save humanity." Marcus crawled through the maintenance access tunnel of the alien flagship, his suit's lights casting eerie shadows on the crystalline walls. The Zephyrian ship's interior was both beautiful and terrifying, organic curves that seemed to pulse with their own life, surfaces that shifted color as he passed, and a low harmonic vibration that seemed to resonate in his bones. "Turn left at the next junction." Lyra's voice guided him through his helmet comm. Even weakened by maintaining the fleet network, her architect abilities allowed her to read the ship's layout like a blueprint. "The reactor core should be 3 levels down." Plasma fire echoed through the corridors as Zephyrian security forces searched for the intruder. Marcus pressed himself against the tunnel wall as heavy footsteps thundered past, grateful that aliens apparently didn't think to check their maintenance shafts any more than humans did. "How much time do we have?" he whispered. "The flagship's main weapons will be charged in 12 minutes, Lyra replied. "After that, Prince Zack can glass every major city on Earth." Marcus dropped down another level, following the increasingly intense vibrations that indicated he was getting closer to the ship's power source. The tunnel here was almost too hot to touch, and his suit's cooling systems were working overtime. "There's something you should know," Lyra continued as he moved, "about what I am, what this means for us." "Lyra, we can discuss your ancestry after we save the planet," Marcus said, cutting through another access panel. "No, you don't understand. Architects don't age the way humans do. We live for thousands of years. And we can't have children with normal humans. I'm literally the only half-architect in existence because my father used technology that nearly killed him to make it possible." Marcus paused in his cutting. "Are you trying to tell me you're immortal?" "Not immortal, but I'll live long enough to watch everyone I care about grow old and die, including you." Her mental voice was filled with pain. "That's why I've never let myself get close to anyone. It hurts too much." "Well," Marcus said, resuming his work on the access panel, "I guess we'll just have to make the time we have count. Besides, nothing about this situation is normal. Maybe we'll figure something out." He broke through into the main reactor chamber and immediately understood why the Zephyrian Empire had conquered half the galaxy. The reactor core was beautiful. A miniature star contained within crystalline matrices that channeled its power through the ship's systems. It was also completely alien, nothing like the fusion reactors humans used. "I'm looking at the core," he reported. "It's like nothing I've ever seen. How am I supposed to overload something I don't understand?" "You don't need to understand it," Lyra said. "You just need to trust me. I can see the energy patterns through the ship's sensors. There's a resonance frequency that will cause a cascade failure." Marcus looked around the chamber and spotted a control terminal near the core housing. But between him and it stood 2 Zephyrian guards, their scaled faces alert as they searched for threats. "Got company," he whispered. "I know. But Marcus, there's something else. I can feel Prince Zack's mind through the ship's systems. He knows you're here and he's planning something. He's not just going to destroy Earth. He's going to make sure I watch it happen first." Marcus checked his remaining equipment. 1 mining charge, a plasma cutter, and a lot of human stubbornness. It would have to be enough. "Can you create a distraction? Maybe overload some of the ship's other systems?" "I'm barely maintaining the fleet network as it is," Lyra said weakly. "But I can try." Suddenly, lights began flickering throughout the reactor chamber and alarms started wailing. The guards looked around in confusion and Marcus seized his chance. He dropped from the maintenance shaft and sprinted toward the control terminal. 1 guard spotted him and raised his weapon, but Marcus was already in motion. He slid under the alien's plasma blast and came up swinging his cutter like a club. The makeshift weapon connected with the guard's head, sending him sprawling. The second guard was faster, getting off 2 shots that missed Marcus by inches. But Marcus had spent years working in dangerous environments where a single mistake meant death. He rolled behind the reactor housing and came up on the guard's blind side, tackling him to the ground. The resonance frequency is 847.3 terahertz, Lyra said urgently as Marcus reached the control terminal. But the interface is biometric locked. You need Zephyrian DNA to access it. Marcus looked at the unconscious guards, then at his plasma cutter. This is going to be gross. Minutes later, with a Zephyrian hand pressed against the scanner, Marcus gained access to the reactor controls. The interface was completely alien, but Lyra guided him through each step, her architect abilities translating the foreign technology. There, she said as he input the final command. The cascade should begin in 90 seconds. But as Marcus turned to leave, Prince Zach's voice echoed through the chamber's communication system. Clever little human, the prince said, his English perfect but tinged with reptilian sibilance, but not clever enough. Did you really think I would leave my ship's most vital system unguarded? Energy barriers slammed down across all the exits, trapping Marcus in the reactor chamber. At the same time, the ship's internal defenses activated, filling the air with a paralytic gas that made his limbs feel like lead. The reactor overload has been contained, Prince Zach continued, and now you will watch as I demonstrate the price of defying the Zephyrian Empire. Through his fading vision, Marcus could see the main display showing Earth hanging vulnerable in space. The flagship's weapons were almost fully charged and there was nothing anyone could do to stop them. I'm sorry, Lyra, he whispered into his communicator. I failed. No, her voice came back stronger than it had been in hours. You didn't fail. You gave me exactly what I needed. What do you mean? You got me inside their ship systems, and now I'm going to show them what a real architect can do. The blue light that had filled Luna Command suddenly blazed to life throughout the Zephyrian flagship. Marcus watched in amazement as every system on the ship began responding to Lyra's will. Not just overriding the controls, but fundamentally changing how they operated. This is impossible, Prince Zach's voice said, now tinged with fear. Architect technology is lost. There are no more of your kind. There's one, Lyra replied, her voice now speaking through the ship's communication system. And I'm very, very angry. The flagship's weapons, which had been charging to destroy Earth, suddenly turned inward. Instead of projecting destructive energy outward, they began channeling power back into the ship's systems, but in patterns that no Zephyrian engineer could have conceived. What are you doing? The prince demanded. I'm rewriting your ship's basic operating protocols, Lyra explained calmly, changing it from a weapon of conquest into something else entirely. Something that will carry a very important message back to your father. Marcus felt the paralytic gas clearing from the chamber as life support systems began operating by new rules. The energy barriers flickered and died. Around him, the ship began to hum with different harmonics, not threatening now, but almost musical. The message, Lyra continued as Marcus made his way toward an escape pod, is simple. Humanity is under the protection of the architects now. Any species that threatens us will face consequences they cannot imagine. There are no more architects, Prince Zach screamed. There's at least one, Lyra said, and one is enough. Marcus reached the escape pod just as the flagship's transformation completed. Looking back through the viewport, he could see that the massive warship no longer looked like a weapon. Its hull had reshaped itself into flowing organic curves that seemed to pulse with benevolent life. It was still enormous, still impressive, but now it radiated peace instead of menace. Lyra, what did you do? I turned their dreadnought into a hospital ship, she said, and he could hear the smile in her mental voice. Complete with the most advanced medical technology in the galaxy, the Zephyrian Empire is about to become very interested in negotiating a peace treaty. As Marcus's escape pod drifted away from the transformed flagship, he watched the remaining Zephyrian fleet. One by one, their ships were powering down weapons and requesting permission to withdraw. The battle was over, so what happens now? Marcus asked. Now we go home, Lyra said. We rebuild. We prepare for a galaxy that's going to be very different with architect technology active again. And Marcus, yeah? We figure out how to make that time we have count. All of it. Marcus looked out at Earth, blue and beautiful and safe, surrounded by the scattered remnants of humanity's desperate fleet. They'd done the impossible again, not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through sheer human determination and the willingness to risk everything for someone they cared about. "I love you too," he said quietly. "I know," Lyra replied. "I could feel it the moment you decided to rescue me from that prison ship. It's what gave me the strength to become who I was always meant to be." As the escape pod made its way back to Luna Command, Marcus realized that his quiet life as a maintenance engineer was definitely over. But looking ahead to a future with Lyra, brilliant, impossible half-architect Lyra, he found he didn't mind at all. After all, humans were very good at adapting to the impossible. And some impossibilities, Marcus thought as he watched the stars, were worth risking everything for. The war was over. Humanity had won, and Marcus Chen, maintenance engineer turned unlikely hero, was going home with the woman who had literally rewritten the rules of the galaxy to protect the species she'd chosen as her own. It was, he decided, a pretty good day's work.